Hello, strangers. Welcome back to the Iron Mike podcast. I'm your host, Mike Wollard. Man, I know it's been a couple weeks. I'm even off my game in recording this. This is like the fourth time that I've started this episode, and even just trying to be able to talk clearly and all that fun stuff. So I guess you definitely lose it quicker than you gain it, both in working out and in podcast recording as well. Past couple weeks have just been a whirlwind. It went from for those of you who listened to the episodes, a month or two ago, or I guess like probably a month ago, I was sick and had pretty much no voice, and it was horrible. And so I got on antibiotic to get better from that. And then pretty much when that antibiotic ran out, a couple days later, ended up getting sick with some sort of head cold thing that was going around. So again, my voice was not up to podcast host caliber to hop on here and talk. And then went to record last week. So it was only supposed to be a 1 week break. Went to record last week, and the charging port on my MacBook decided it turned my podcast mic on. It recorded my AirPods, but it was not registering a charging cable, and then it needed to be charging. And so I got to drop the laptop off and troubleshoot that for a few days and pay money to get that fixed. And then just to cap off the week, caught a rock in my windshield while I was driving, and just kind of one thing after the other last week. So it was good times. So, but anyways, we're back today. Everything should be working properly. Not doing a video. Not really putting a lot of time into the video side of things of the podcast. The podcast itself, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, things like that, get a lot more traction than YouTube itself does, at least for the podcast. I'm still going to do the Let's Clarify stuff and even get some other videos and stuff in the work once I get different equipment and things like that in. But I'm excited to keep churning the podcast out and then save YouTube for a lot more of the in-depth stuff. So today we're basically just doing kind of a Q&A from a lot of different clients, a lot of different people that have questions that people just kind of asked lately that are really good questions that I wanted to be able to kind of address to y'all. So more of a rapid fire type thing, only 5 questions or so, but things I think they're important, and so I won't go as in depth on them. I'm going to save a lot of the nerdier, super in depth type stuff for these YouTube videos that I upload, and that way the people that want just quick and easy answers, here's the podcast, making sure I'm keeping everything nice and simple for everybody. And then some people that want to nerd out a little bit more can go to the YouTube and catch some of the more in-depth videos. So anyways, let's dive in here. Question number 1 is really about creatine. I actually had a female client that reached out and was wondering, if creatine was okay for women, if there's a guy and a girl version and things like that. And so just trying to explain to her what exactly creatine is. I was like, well, this is a good question for the podcast that, a lot of people are always interested in, clients, fellow gym goers. Everybody's heard of creatine, and, it gets a good rap, it gets a bad rap, it gets people use it for different things and different reasons. And so we'll just kind of cover it all real quick. So for starters, creatine is a supplement. Creatine is something that every supplement store is going to sell. It's super cheap. It's very, very well researched. Creatine and caffeine are probably your 2 most researched supplements. And so for starters, creatine gets a bad rap for, causing bloating, for causing, kidney issues, little things like that have been more than debunked. And we'll get into a little bit of like the digestion issue side of things. But creatine basically is a supplement that helps to enhance your recovery through in between sets and things. In between sets, but that also allows for indirectly for more like power output and things like that. And so the creatine itself helps replenish ATP quicker. Every time you contract the muscle, your body breaks down ATP for that energy, and so your creatine basically helps to do that more efficiently. Now, most people hop on creatine to enhance a bulk, to get stronger during a bulk, but honestly, in my opinion, and a lot of opinions of people that are smarter than I am, creatine is a lot more useful on a cut. A lot of people will immediately be like, well, creatine causes bloating, like why would it be better on a cut? So the creatine, the water that it causes you to retain actually is intracellular. So it puts it in the muscle cell versus being extracellular, which is where you would see the bloating and things like that. And so the water that it's causing you to retain is all intracellular. So if anything, it's just going to make your muscles look more full. But it's also good because on a cut, a lot of times your carbs are what you're cutting, so your body's is not holding on to as much water. So holding the water in the muscle cells and keeping those hydrated is actually very beneficial. And so, yes, for guys and girls, there's no difference. There's no separation there. But during cuts and things like that, whenever your calories are that much lower, your energy is that much lower, the creatine really helps to step up and help with that endurance in between sets and that recovery, and still indirectly help you to have good and beneficial workouts, still lift heavy as possible during a cut, during any sort of a caloric deficit, just to make sure that you're still performing optimally. And so indirectly, because of the reduced recovery time, things along those lines, because of that, that's kind of where the power and strength output increase kind of comes from. It has a lot of neurological benefits and things like that as well, but from a fitness perspective, that's kind of the spiel. That's kind of what creatine's used for. It's going to help replenish that ATP quicker. Recommended dosage wise, I pretty much recommend 5 grams for people across the board, anywhere between 3 to 5 grams, kind of depending on how much you weigh. But those, you can creatine load, but most complaints that people have with creatine is that it causes digestion issues and things like that. For most people, it doesn't, but if it does cause any sort of GI stress, then doing the creatine loading aspect, which is basically a week of doing 15 to 20 grams a day just to get that surplus. So that's the thing, creatine works on a surplus. So it's not something you take like a pre-workout and immediately feel the benefits. It's something that builds up over time so that your body has those creatine phosphate molecules to pair with ATP to rebuild it quicker, et cetera, et cetera. And so I don't think it's worth like the benefit to try to creatine load. I don't think it's worth the potential GI stress. I just do the 5 grams a day. I take it every day on workout and non-workout days, just every morning. I take it. There's no stimulant, there's no anything like that, so it doesn't matter at what time of day you take it, but that's usually the 5 grams is kind of just clear and cut across the board, the dosage for that. So super, super safe to take. It helps my workouts, but it's not a requirement. Creatine's one of those I put kind of in the like second tier on my, if I have like 3 tiers of supplements and kind of where they fall, creatine's in that like middle tier where I think it's necessary and definitely helps workouts, but it's not, a multivitamin, a fish oil, or a protein powder type of deal. It's in that second tier, but not so much extra that it's in the third tier where like my BCAAs and things like that are. So that's creatine. Helps you get stronger. It's good. Not harmful to you. Just pay attention to how it helps or how it affects like digestion, and maybe you need to adjust the serving based on that. So on to the next question, lifting with a belt for back support. So for a long time, even when I first started going to the gym, I always thought the weightlifting belts were just to basically support my lower back. They are not that. They're not lower back supports at all. They're actually they're helping to keep your core tight. So whenever you're doing your big lifts and your bench, squat, deadlift, or even like overhead presses and things like that, and you're wearing the weightlifting belt, it's helping to create abdominal pressure and helping to keep your core tight in a full 360. So not even just your abs, you're getting sides, back, the lower back, everything is creating basically this intramuscular pressure there. And so that weightlifting belt gives your core something to press against. And so it helps to keep everything nice and tight. So indirectly, it protects your back. And it's able to keep like force leakage and things like that from happening. So if you will notice somebody bench pressing, but they have like their wrists like broken back, that bend in the wrist really causes a lot of force production to leak out there instead of it being a straight line all the way from your elbow through your wrist and into the bar. When your wrist kind of breaks back a little bit, it creates a little bit of loss of force there. And so same thing with whenever your core doesn't remain tight, whether you're squatting or deadlifting, force can leak out as your form begins to break down. And so that lifting with a belt kind of helps to keep everything tight and keep that force leakage from happening. But on top of that, it also is going to help create that pressure. And so there's research that shows that it does help like with lifting heavier and things like that. I personally don't lift with a belt I keep my core nice and tight just fine, but I'm also not competing. I'm not doing things like that. So I don't need to, get extra, excuse me, an extra 10 to 15 pounds on any of my lifts, by wearing a belt. I make sure I keep my core nice and tight. Most belts pinch me, and so that's the big reason that I don't wear them. I can't ever find a comfortable spot, and so I end up lifting worse or lifting less or things like that because I don't. It's just not comfortable for me. It's something I could probably get used to, but it's just not something that I put the time in. And knowing that it's not, I can lift healthily and safely without one, then it's just not a big, priority for me. So I hope that answers that one. Next one, very common. Do women get bulky from lifting? No, they do not. Women and men are just built differently. That's a pretty obvious one. Women's testosterone is a lot lower. You could even look at, CrossFit women that lift in CrossFit and that are some of the strongest women in the world, and they still aren't bulky. I mean, they're definitely have a lot more muscle and things like that, but for them to be as strong as they are and to lift as much as they do, etc., they are still not jacked. They're still not, trying to compete for Mr. Olympia. And even a lot of the women that step on those bodybuilding stages, I mean, you can hear the sound of their voice. I mean, they're taking testosterone. They're using steroids and things like that to get to that point. So, no, for, the average woman that just wants to go to the gym and work out, you are not going to get bulky. If anything, it's going to give you a better look. You're going to build some muscle, and as your body fat drops, you're going to, women always want to get that toned look. That's really all that happens is your body fat drops and you have some muscle underneath, and so you get some of those lines. You see the definition. But it's just a body fat dropping type thing. There's no, toning exercises or anything like that. It's just bringing that body fat down and having some muscle underneath. So I encourage all of my female clients to lift heavy, to make sure that they're doing resistance training and using free weights and all that good stuff just to build a strong physique. Because then once the diet's under control and the body fat starts to drop, then you have a good looking product underneath instead of just being skinny fat is pretty much what I call it. My first round, or my first, time going through with my trainer, that's essentially what I was. I was skinny fat by the end of it because I didn't have a lot of muscle underneath. I was in a pretty extreme deficit and didn't realize it at the time because I wasn't super knowledgeable. But I was in a pretty extreme deficit. So even as I got to, 11, 12% body fat, I was still just had some loose skin, had, nothing was hard, nothing was, lined out, things like that. I just got skinnier, but I still had the skin. I didn't have the muscle underneath, the mature muscle to kind of have things grab onto. So I encourage everybody to lift heavy, because females especially, you're not going to get bulky. It's just not possible. On to the next one. Females always asking, why they can't build a butt. Guys too. Guys also do not train their glutes hard, nor do they train them consistently at all. But I have a lot of female clients that are constantly wondering why they can't build a butt, why their glutes aren't strong, why there's no development there. And there's a few different reasons. One, these female clients are usually running 10 to 15 miles a day, and they're also eating very, very little. So those are two factors really that just hurt weight loss in general, is the moms that are running just way too often, the women that are running way too often. And I know I'm focusing on women a lot. Guys do this too, but women are just more notorious for being obsessive runners, and those are just the clients that I deal with specifically. And so if you're offended by hearing this, well, it could very well apply to you. So take notes and make adjustments. But a lot of the running and then extreme caloric deficits, you don't have the ability to build muscle. And so you're in such an extreme deficit and it's extra stress. You're running 10, 15, 20 miles a day. And so that's a lot of stress on the body. A deficit is stress on the body. And then now you're also stressed because you're not getting the results and stuff you're wanting. So it's kind of this tornado, tailspin, whatever, just this combination of things kind of going against you. So you're not eating enough protein, and you're not lifting heavy enough. I used to train a group of fit moms whenever I was working at Fitness One, and I loved it because they're so used to the high intensity, the circuits, the Orange Theories, the running and stuff. And so anytime that I was able to train and work with them, usually 1 or 2 days a week, I'd get this group, and so we would just lift heavy. And maybe we'd do supersets, maybe we'd have some cardio aspects in there, but my goal for them was to show them the benefits of strength training, the benefits of heavy resistance training, and they come into the gym the next day and they're so sore, and so just being able to show and educate them on the benefits of lifting heavy like that and being able to actually build muscle. So when you're trying to build a butt, you've got to eat more, you've got to have protein, and you've got to lift heavy. So lots of heavy hip thrusts, lots of specific glute training exercises. So your squats, lunges, any sort of abductor exercises to strengthen the whole thing, your donkey kicks to hit all different angles. I mean, the list goes on. Brett Contreras is one of my favorite. He's the glute guy. He's good at, he has a book called Strong Curves that I highly recommend. I use it for programming for pretty much every single one of my female clients who like have weakness in those areas. And it's not even just an aesthetic. I mean, building a butt is partially aesthetic, but just for women, making sure their hips are strong, making sure that, that's probably the most common injury I have with female clients. Female athletes, they tear their ACLs a lot, but just your average, your moms, your any of the middle-aged women that I have, hips are always the most frequent injury I have, whether it's lots of squats and things like that. The hips are just made differently, made obviously to be able to give childbirth. And so I do a lot of glute training, a lot of hip thrusting, and a lot of different variations from that. And I get a lot from his book. So Strong Curves is the name of that book, and it's a phenomenal education piece, but also just in formulating your workouts and kind of piecing stuff together to help build big, strong glutes. So I'll recommend that. And so that pretty much encompasses why you can build a butt. Eating more, eating enough protein, lifting heavy, and not running as much. Running long distances like that really hurts your ability to build muscle throughout that time. So usually if you're having trouble building muscle, maybe tone back the cardio a little bit, and that'll typically help. Lastly, we have nutrition labels, and this is kind of an overarching topic, one that I can dive super deep on, but basically just kind of a reminder to everybody listening to really pay attention to the nutrition labels that you're reading. I had a client last night that we were talking through some of their tracking issues and trying to figure out why like the calories and the macros weren't lining up. And so with nutrition labels, they get I want to say 5-10%, something like that, of wiggle room with the calories that they post on their box. That way they can have quote unquote pretty aesthetic numbers. So something that, may say 120 calories, 140 calories, but then when you go through and track the macros, they'll have, proteins 4 calories per gram, carbs are 4 calories per gram, and fats are 9 calories per gram. So when you do the math, what it says is 140, but then you do the math and it comes out to 163 by actually tracking the macros. And so then when you start tracking things, in your MyFitnessPal or whatever, you've got it saying it's X amount of calories, but then you're looking at your macros and you're either short or you're over or whatever, and trying to figure out, where the issue is, if it's a tracking issue, is it a measurement issue? And so all that to say, just being really careful when you're reading those nutrition labels. Same thing with the net carbs and things like that. A lot of nutrition labels will put on there, that it's only X number of calories because of the net carbs, just because it's got a lot of fiber in there, and that those total carbs still count. It's really frustrating, to be able to find 3 to 4 weeks, into a client, looking through their food and stuff that they've been, only tracking like net carbs and not their total carbs. That fiber does not mean that those carbs do not count. Those still count calorie wise. And so making sure that as you're tracking those Quest bars, they focus on the net carbs, and that's great for, like being able to limit insulin spikes, being able to control blood sugar, things of that nature. The fiber helps to the glycemic index. Fiber helps to reduce that glycemic load, that glycemic response in foods. And so, anytime you're eating a carb, you want to pair some broccoli with it. Protein also lowers the glycemic index of carbs. So there's a lot of different ways to do that, but they focus on those net carbs from a calorie standpoint, and that's not the way to go about it. It's just not accurate. So making sure that whenever you're reading those nutrition labels, that you pay attention to the macros, and making sure that as you're multiplying it out, that you add up the calories from there. And so it's being nitpicky to an extent. Sometimes it's pretty extreme, but if you eat 10 things in a day and they're all 20 calories more because of the macros versus what the label actually says calorie wise, then I mean, that's 200 calories extra right there. And now you're wondering why you're not losing weight, or why, you're not losing weight as consistently as you thought. And so now your coach or whoever, if you're doing your macros, whatever it is, now you've got to make adjustments and you've got to figure out why things aren't working. Now you're making adjustments to your nutrition when you don't necessarily need to, et cetera, et cetera. So just making sure that you're reading those nutrition labels carefully and focusing more on the macros than just the calories. So anyways, I hope this was informative. I felt like I was all over the place in this one, but it's going to take some time to get back in the swing of things. The information's there. You can just kind of laugh through what was a lot of talking in circles, but hey, it's okay. We're back on the grind, and we're back on the weekly upload. So I hope this was informative. Type in the comments or reach out to me on social media. You can kind of find me anywhere pretty much, but feel free to reach out and ask questions. I'll still upload this as a video like onto YouTube. And so type in the questions there, either for clarification or for future topics. Be on the lookout for some more in-depth on some of these, creatine especially. That one will come out Friday most likely, as long as everything works according to plan. I'll upload that Friday, really going in depth on what it is, what's going on underneath, all that good stuff. So I'm excited for that one, and it'll hopefully answer a lot of questions. But also, we have our next launch is April 4th, so that's next Monday. Super excited for it. Our March launch was our biggest to date. We have a lot of happy clients, and it's been just a joy for us, and it's been exciting to see how God's taking care of me and my wife and all that good stuff. So yeah, no complaints here. I'm super excited about the future and just for all of you listening. So thanks again as always, and we will talk to you in the next one.